Welcome back to my Pokemon Emerald Game Boy Advance walkthrough series. In this episode, I'll continue my adventure through Hoenn by exploring Rustboro City, traveling across Route 116, exploring Rusturf Tunnel, and to make my way to Dewford Town. So let's head back into Hoenn and get started. So at this point, I'm going to be going ahead and collecting the first HM, which is Cut. And Cut is a normal type move that has 50 base power and has 95% accuracy. Now, with different moves in the game, they can have 100% accuracy, or they can have less than 100% accuracy, and they can have as low as 50% accuracy. And there are moves with higher base power but lower accuracy, and there are moves with less power but 100% accuracy. And examples of this are Thunder and Thunderbolt, and Fire Blast and Flamethrower. Now, Thunder has 70% accuracy but 120 base power. And Fire Blast has 120 base power and 85% accuracy, but Thunderbolt has 95% accuracy, 95% base power, but 100% accuracy, and Flamethrower has 95 base power, but 100% accuracy, and Thunder and Thunderbolt are both electric type moves, and Fire Blast and Flamethrower are both fire type moves. And also the higher base power moves in general have less power points than the lower base power moves. So that is something else to consider as well. And now I'll go ahead and talk more about HMs. And to use HM moves outside of battle, you need a certain gym badge. And for Cut, you need the Rustboro City gym badge in order to use it outside battle. Otherwise, you can only use it inside of battle. And the main goal of Pokemon games in general is to collect 8 gym badges, and then challenge the Elite Four and then Champion in order to complete the game. And right now we're at the first gym and we're battling some Geodudes. And Geodudes resist a good amount of early game moves, including normal moves and flying type moves, as well as Torchic's fire type moves. So if you picked Torchic, you might have a disadvantage here if you're at a low level. Although if you're at a high level, then you won't have as much of a disadvantage here, because keep in mind that Geodudes have low special defense, but they have high physical defense. So normal type moves and flying type moves at this point in the game won't work so well on them. And at this point I'm in a double battle against 2 different trainers, and this is something that they introduced in Emerald that's different from Ruby and Sapphire. And in this game, there are 2 trainers that can spot you at the same time if they rotate, or 2 trainers that will be in a certain way where they can see you, and they'll challenge you to a double battle. And you can talk to them separately, or you can have one trainer spot you if they're rotating in order to challenge them to a single battle. And there's a good advantage to doing a double battle because you can have the stronger Pokemon help out the weaker Pokemon, like in this case with my Grovyle helping out the weaker routes. Because the Geodudes at this point are pretty strong for this routes that I have. And in a single battle I would have to use routes and then switch it out immediately to Grovyle in order to have the Grovyle KO the Geodudes. And right now I'm at the first gym battle. And the Geodudes, I think, at this point are pretty straightforward. If you have your Torchic evolved into Combusken, then Double Kick will work just as well against them, pretty much. And then you're up against Nosepass. Now, if you haven't evolved your starter Pokemon into its second form, this Nosepass can be pretty difficult to take out. It has pretty good attack and defense for this, and special defense for this point in the game. But if your starter's at your second form, especially if it's a Marshtomp, then this battle's pretty easy, because Marshtomp resists rock-type moves, and will resist the strongest move, Rock Tomb. And it'll have good defense for taking tackles from it. And with Combusken, it'll also be able to beat it pretty easily with Double Kick. But if you have Grovyle, then you'll probably want to have Bullet Seed on it, because Absorb is pretty weak, and Rock Tomb is pretty strong. Rock Tomb is pretty strong for this point in the game, and well, the thing is that Bullet Seed is random in how many times it hits. But if you're lucky, it can do more than Absorb does. And if you're at a low level, this battle can still be tricky. But if you're at a high enough level, then Grovyle should be able to take on Nosepass pretty well. And when you beat Roxanne, you get the move Rock Tomb. And Rock Tomb is a rock type move that has 50 base power and has only 80% accuracy. But when it connects, it always lowers the Pokemon speed by 1 stage. And you can lower a Pokemon stat by up to 6 stages. And there are also moves that raise a Pokemon stat, and you can do this up to 6 times. 6 stages, that is. Because there are moves that also lower a Pokemon stat by 2 stages. And there are moves that raise a Pokemon stat by 2 stages as well. Now I go ahead and buy some Pokeballs, just in case I fail at catching a Nincada, because of course catching a Pokemon is all based on randomness. And this time I managed to find a Nincada just by going through the area. And if I don't find a Nincada by the time I explore the area, I just go ahead and just wander around a bit until I find a Nincada, which can take a little bit of time, but thankfully Nincada seems to be pretty common here. I haven't looked up the chance that Nincada has for showing up, but it does seem to be a pretty high chance of showing up. And my Routes is just strong enough to do a good amount of damage to the Nincada, but also not strong enough. But also not too strong that it KOs it, so that's pretty nice. Because with Nincada, it has Leech Life, which is super effective against a Lotad. So Lotad wouldn't really probably work so well against, for weakening the Nincada, like it would be against weakening the Routes early on. So it's good that I had the Routes around in order to weaken the Nincada. Because Grovyle likely would have KO'd it with any one of its moves. Or nearly KO'd it, but might have KO'd it since each move does a random amount of damage. So it's possible that I could have KO'd it sometimes and not KO'd it other times. Like, for example, that Pursue KO'd it. So I would have been limited with what moves I could use that wouldn't KO it. So it's possible that even Grovyle's Quick Attack could have KO'd it because it's such a high level, but it's really hard to say. And considering that the Nincada could have a defense-lowering nature, it might be possible that the Grovyle could actually take it out in one shot. Of course, you have to deal with critical hits, which can happen at random, but there's really nothing I can do about that at this stage. Thankfully, Nincada is common, like I said before. Now, Routes at this point just learned Double Team, and Double Team raises the Pokemon's evasion by 1 stage. And Double Team is a pretty infamous move. And Double Team is one that's actually banned in competitive battles because of its evasion raising effect. And what it does is essentially makes every battle luck based, because when it raises the evasion, it makes the moves have more of a chance of missing, even the 100% accurate ones. But there are certain moves that bypass evasion, like Swift and Aerial Ace and Shockwave, for example. But those moves aren't particularly very strong, so you do have that drawback. Right now I'm battling Shroomish, and Shroomish is a pure grass-type Pokemon that has Effect Spore as its ability. And what Effect Spore does is that when you attack it with a move that makes contact, like Tackle, you have, I think it's 30% chance of getting a random stats condition inflicted on you. You don't get freeze inflicted on you, but I think it's paralysis and sleep and poison. And alongside Stun Spore, it's good to have a lot of items around for Shroomishes, so that, at least at this point in the game, when you aren't strong enough to take them out in a single attack. Now, Grovile's Rock Tomb can bypass Effect Spore because it's a move that doesn't make contact with the opponent, but Rock Tomb only has 8% accuracy, so that's something to keep in mind. Absorb is another move I think that doesn't make contact, but Shroomish resists Absorb, so Absorb wouldn't work well against it either. I say that because Rock Tomb has a good chance of missing. So pretty soon I'm going to be coming up to the next area, and the next area only has Whismurs in it, and Whismur is a normal type with the move Uproar, and it's good to have routes in there with Trace, because Trace copies its ability, Noiseproof I think it's called, Soundproof actually it's called, and what Soundproof does is that it blocks noise sound-based moves from working, and this includes moves like Uproar, so it becomes immune to the move Uproar, so it essentially wastes a turn and does nothing by using that move. And I think the low-level Whismurs only know that move. Or they may know that and only Pound is their only other move. But whenever I've battled them, they've only ever used Uproar, so it makes it really nice when I battle them, because they pretty much always use Uproar, and make it so they waste their move and don't do anything, and allows me to get a free move on them without taking any damage. Right now I'm battling this Team Aqua Grunt, and I feel like this battle's a pretty straightforward battle, and once you beat this guy, you're able to rescue this other guy's win goal, and get the Devon goods, and be able to move on to Dewford Town, which has the second gym. And notably, there's a very short gap between the first gym and the second gym this game, as well as the fourth gym to the fifth gym. You can actually go straight from the fourth gym to the fifth gym, other than going through one optional area. The other gyms have a pretty big gap between them. Now, if I recall right, Cut is a move that is pretty much optional to use in the game. I don't think there's any part where you have to use Cut in order to progress through the game, but Cut is just there to get to optional trainers and items. And this part of the game is a part where I just take some time to get some optional items and battle some optional trainers. Here I get a Chesto Berry, and what Chesto Berries do is that they heal sleep off a Pokemon, and you can use them outside of battle, or in a more better way, likely you'll be able to give them to your Pokemon, and they'll heal sleep inside a battle. And when I go through major battles, I try not to use items during battle. I just use the in-game. I just use the items that you can give to your Pokemon to have effect, instead of using items like Hyper Potions and Full Restores and so forth, and Revives. Here we get a long dialogue scene which gives us two things. We get a letter, and we get the Pokénav, which I don't think is in Ruby and Sapphire. Or if it is, there's not the match call feature. I think in Ruby and Sapphire there's the trainer's eyes, but in Emerald it's replaced with the match call. Now you get the letter and you have to deliver that to Steven Stone, who will be encountering quite a bit later on, though not too much later on. And then we'll get the match call feature. And with this feature you can rematch trainers that you've talked to. You can't rematch all trainers, but there are certain trainers when you battle them that will rematch you after you've battled them. And I think they'll battle you if you've taken a certain amount of steps. There'll be a chance that a trainer will be able to you'll be able to have a rematch with that trainer, but the rematch will go away after a certain amount of time. And this is a feature that I don't use throughout the game. I just go ahead and do all the trainer battles, but I don't do the rematches. And this is the only time in the game I'm pretty sure, I think it's the only time in the game where you have to use the match call feature. Pretty soon I'm coming up to the second rival fight, which is an optional battle, but I go ahead and do it for completionist's sake, and also so I can get the experience. And in this battle, her second Pokemon other than her starter will depend on what starter you've chosen. So if you have Trico, her second Pokemon will be Lotad, but if you have a different starter, her starter will be different, and her second Pokemon will be different. And the starter she picks will always be the one that has a type advantage over yours. So she'll have either a Trico, a Mudkip, or a Torchic at this point. And her second Pokemon will be something of a different type. And here's the big thing where I have Rock Tomb, why I taught my Grovyle Rock Tomb, so that I can use it on this Torchic to beat it easily. If the Lotad used Growl beforehand, then it'd be a 2-hit KO, but otherwise it's a 1-hit KO. And Rock Tomb did miss there, but this Torchic tends to always go for Focus Energy first. So I can end up getting an easy time to hit it the second time, which always works that way. And then I end up KOing and winning the battle easily. Now the Lotad can't do much with its attacks. And Focus Energy, what that does is that it increases the critical hit ratio of a Pokemon. I don't know by how much, but you can look it up on Bulbapedia. Now here I explore an optional area of Petalburg Woods, and in this area I get the Miracle Seed, which is an item that boosts the power of Grass-type moves by 10%. And I go ahead and give it to my Grovyle so it can have an item just for the sake of having an item, because there's not really another item that I think is useful for it to have at this point. I just got an X attack, and what that does is that increases the attack of your Pokemon by 1 stage during battle. And items like that I skip using because they're items that you don't have an effect when you give them to your Pokemon. And there are also X defenses, X speeds, and X specials, which increase the special attack of a Pokemon. X special defenses didn't exist until later on. Now I'm almost to the end of the video. I'm gonna go ahead and sail to Dewford Town and get a scene where Norman gets registered in the Pokénav. And in the next video, I'm gonna be exploring Dewford Town and going to the second gym and doing some other things as well. So if you like this video, be sure to leave it a like, and if you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more videos. So this is Isaac, and I'll see you later.